Hey everyone, and welcome into another week of the Daily Reflector's Fearless Football Forecast. I'm Reflector Prep Sports beat writer Jordan Anders, sitting out here baking in the sun. And this is Ronnie Woodward, back to look at another week of high school football. Ronnie, for me, it's the first long-sleeved edition, although I'm regretting it a little bit on Wednesday afternoon. It's a little warmer than I thought it was going to be, but we're getting close to football weather, a little bit cooler. And
it's a huge week too.
It
as
is.
we will discuss here in a minute.
It is,
This
definitely.
is the week of high school football, pretty much.
Absolutely. We're out here at Conley. The team is practicing out here in front of us, which is why we're trying to be a little hushed. But gonna be a fun week, like we mentioned. Obviously out here because we were at Rose last week, I believe, and now we're out here this week because that's the matchup that we've been looking forward to for most of the year. Rose and Conley playing this week. Got a couple of other big games. One other big game in that conference involving South Central that we'll get to in a minute. But we're going to start with Rose and Conley, because that's the biggest story of the week, Ronnie, and it's the biggest story pretty much every year. Last year these teams played and combined to score about 1 million points. I'm really hoping that doesn't happen again this year, because that was one of the more interesting games that I've ever covered last year over at Rose. But Rose won 77-67, but this is a different year. These are two different teams, Ronnie, and this is the point in the week where we give Rose some bulletin board material, I feel like, because as much as you want to say you throw the records out the window with these two teams, and in fact I talked to both coaches about that this week. It's just one of those situations where on paper and with what they've done so far this season, Conley has been so good. They are red hot right now, and Rose seems like they're finding themselves a little bit, but this seems like a pretty tall task for the Rampant. So they're on the way over here on Friday. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a great atmosphere in the pregame, but I think once the game gets started, I think Rose is just going to have so much trouble trying to slow down this Conley offense, and Conley's defense playing as well as it is going to be an interesting matchup against Rose's offense. But I think, when you look at when Conley has the ball, there's just so much Conley does, and Rose has struggled so badly in the past couple years to slow these teams down. So I think this is it's going to be a fun matchup, fun atmosphere, but I think eventually once they get rolling here, Conley is just the better team, and I think they're going to pull away and win this one.
All right, so you're going Vikings.
I am.
All right. I hope for your sake it is the atmosphere that we've probably both seen at this point is in a fun, big-time matchup. I will note, when I was the high schools guy and used to run this thing, I was completely off on this game every time. I never got it right. I was so mad at myself. Every time I was tempted to pick Conley, I would pick Rose. Every time I was tempted to pick Rose and an upset, I would pick Conley. So that part of me wants to pick Rose. To be like, you know what, it's going to be this big upset. I'm going to pick Rose. I'm going to get it right. But I just can't do it. I was making the comment out here last week. I saw Conley last week for the first time, I think, since Ehlers was a sophomore. Since like Cornell Powell and him were dueling it out here.
Right.
And I was impressed. He's made so many strides in those few years. And I was telling people out here too, it's not just the Holton Ehlers show. The kicker is good. They get touchbacks every time. The defense is really good. The receiver is really, really good. C.J. Johnson, the little running back, can hit some plays. So it's not just Holton Ehlers is really good, and that's why Conley's scoring all these points.
Right.
Holton's awesome, don't get me wrong. He's really calm, and you can tell he's a senior, and he does his thing and kind of just orchestrates it all. But they have some other pieces that surprised me, to be honest. Not knowing, like I said, I hadn't seen him play in years.
Right.
Not knowing all the different pieces. I was impressed with the depth. I think it's just too much. It's too much for Rose. Again, I think it's a fun game. It's an exciting game. There's a lot of emotion that goes into it. Doesn't surprise me if Rose comes out and goes for a flea flicker, an onside kick, tries to just go all out to do whatever they can. I just don't think they have enough horses. Again, I think the depth, Holton leading the way. I think this senior class is huge for Conley. And Rose has had the edge in this matchup. I think you had it written down here. They've won the last 2 meetings and 4 of the last 5, despite being Conley having the better program really over that span for the most part, minus the Cornell Powell factor that I saw a lot of, 4 or 5 years ago. But I think this senior class for Conley isn't going to let it happen here. Not at Conley, their final go at it. So I'll take the Vikings as well. And a fun game. Glad you're getting to see it. That's a lot of fun to cover.
It is going to be a good one.
Another good game in this conference. We're finally getting to the point where this is all kind of shaking out.
Right.
South Central 3-0 in the league. Conley's 3-0. They're tied for first place. South Central goes to New Bern. I saw New Bern last week against Conley. Totally overwhelmed. I was somewhat disappointed or surprised maybe at New Bern's just talent level, to be honest. It wasn't the New Bern team of 4 or 5 years ago that had a bunch of D1 recruits.
Right.
Because on offense, they had a big running back and kind of bruised their way, but there wasn't a ton of skill, a ton of speed. Conley really took it to them in the open space, which is just kind of crazy to see, because that's what New Bern, the teams I'm so used to, are built on really fast running backs, a quarterback like a Mike Hughes, who we just saw destroy ECU a little bit last weekend.
Right.
Those kind of players that can make a lot of things happen in open space. It wasn't that way against Conley. Again, maybe that's a testament maybe how good the Vikings are, but they totally own that matchup. On the flip side, South Central has a similar opportunity. They're going to New Bern. The players are yelling here, so I'm trying to speak up. But as we discussed, South Central's never beaten a 4A team ever in football in its history. All their wins in this league, out of conference, etc., have come against 3A teams, the Wayne County schools. Rose this year is 3A, so that doesn't count. So this is a huge. This is a milestone, a statement, whatever, a huge game for South Central, because it's not going to be easy. I just don't think, again, I wasn't impressed at all with New Bern really last week, but I just think that mental side of it for South Central, this is a huge game that, obviously Conley and South Central might be on a little bit of a collision course or whatever here, but this is the game I think the Falcons is big to get past, and they just had a bye week last week, right? Weren't they just off? So they got a chance probably to check out New Bern, do some extra scouting, but huge moment, huge opportunity for South Central, much like Conley had last week. Conley handled it fine. I really kind of want to pick New Bern here too. I'm not gonna lie. I really thought New Bern's gonna beat somebody, and it might be Rose. They haven't played Rose yet, right? It might be Rose. So yeah, whatever. I'm wearing red. I like the Falcons. I don't like them as much as I like Conley.
Right.
But I'll go with South Central, but they're going to have to go earn it for sure. I think they're going to have to go win that thing and get physical and beat up on that New Bern team. But I'll take Falcons in a close one.
It's definitely going to be, and that's a long trip, one of the longest one, or probably the longest one in that conference that any of these teams have to make. So it's going to be a fun one, and like you mentioned, as South Central, I'll keep this kind of short, because I think the Falcons do go and win, and maybe not in a blowout fashion. Although the last time I said that was when they played Rose, and then of course they blew out Rose. So I'm sure they'll take that to heart. But I do think they go and win, because I think, like you said, coming off the bye week, the talent level, the speed that they have, and talking to a couple of people this week now that we're kind of, like you mentioned, in that part of the year where we can kind of see that game at the end of the year of Conley and South Central, if they both stay unbeaten, which I think is going to happen, because I think South Central goes and their speed is just too much for that. That was the biggest thing from last week that I talked to people, including you, about New Bern not having the speed, and if you don't have the speed to match up with South Central, then you're not going to beat them.
That's a good point.
So that's going to be I think that's a win for the Falcons. Those are the two games out of that league, the ECC 3A, 4A. We drop down to the 2A schools now, and Aiden Grifton on the road. I saw them last week. They are starting to pull out starting to kind of develop a penchant for pulling these close games out. They get a last-minute win at Washington a couple weeks ago, get a last-minute win last week at home against Kinston, which was a fantastic game. It was a lot of fun to watch. Kinston hit a big play to take the lead in the fourth quarter. Aiden Grifton just calmly drove down the field and gets a 28-yard touchdown pass on 4th and 4 with about a minute to go to win that game. So they're on the road at a North Lenoir team that's coming off a bye, but that has struggled, has lost 3 straight. They've been banged up a little bit. Aiden Grifton, even last year when North Lenoir really kind of took a big step and they played in kind of a de facto conference championship game the last week of the year, Aiden Grifton really handled them. I think this year North Lenoir looks like they've taken a little bit of a step back, and this Aiden Grifton team is really starting to find itself. I think they go on the road to Lenoir County and get a win. I'm
taking the Chargers as well, for sure. Last week I was so close to picking Kinston and kind of did in a weird way. But man, you saw a great game. Aiden Grifton won by what, 1 point?
1 point.
Final minute.
Yep.
So props to the Chargers. I was wrong. I doubted them in some ways. So I think Aiden Grifton, they're rolling. Yeah, no question. I'll take the Chargers to win big. Do they have some more of a letdown, that type of thing? But Cornwell's too good of a coach, and I think they're rolling and kind of have that leadership and that internal whatnot with the players and stuff. So I think Aiden Grifton wins big. An intriguing game here next, Jordan. Southwest Edgecombe is at Farmville Central. Farmville Central, the epitome of their season is to look at their record. They're 4-4 overall. They're 1-1 in the league.
And to that point, 199 points scored, 199 points allowed.
There you go.
In 8 games this year.
I mean,
they're a push through 8 games.
They are. They've played well at times. not played well at times. They've just kind of been up and down and just kind of coasting along. Not really bad, but not really good.
Right.
You know, like some other teams in the county, it's kind of shifted, or people have kind of made their run or have fallen off a little bit. Farmville is just kind of Farmville. They're just kind of
still
doing
looking.
their thing,
Still
and
looking,
we
yeah.
don't know yet if they're going to make that big push or are they going to fall off a little bit in that league. This is a big game, though. Southwest Edgecombe 7-1. 2-0 in that conference. Eastern Plains probably the favorite, I assume, or the leader in the Eastern Plains.
Yeah, they're tied for the lead in that league.
Yeah, I mean, they're physical. You know, they beat up in North Pitt a few weeks ago, I believe, and so big opportunity for the Jaguars here at home. Farmville just got a win last week, went on the road, won at North Johnson. Pretty good win. We touched on North Johnson a little bit. Not the best team in the world, but you know, to go on the road, a team like Farmville that doesn't have a lot of depth, that's a good victory. So, you know, you play in Southwest Edgecombe, it's no secret. We talked about it a lot. Can you stop the run? That's what it comes down to. They're gonna line up. They're gonna get physical, get big, try to run at you. How does Farmville respond? I don't know enough personally. I don't think I've seen Farmville this year, to be honest. I might be on Friday, but I don't know a lot about their defensive front seven and personnel and how they're doing, kind of stopping the run. But I'm gonna take Southwest Edgecombe. I think just because you noted here, Farmville hasn't won against Southwest since 2013. So Southwest Edgecombe's had the edge here the past few years. I think it's a good game, though, a close game. I think, like some of these other games, again, the theme is there's going to be some really good games, some close games, some ones to watch this week here in Pitt County. So Farmville, I think, fights, and it's close. I just think maybe Southwest Edgecombe gets a close victory, grinds it out a little bit in the third, fourth quarters.
Yeah, and I think Farmville Central, getting quarterback Jay Lavelle back last week, he adds a completely different dimension to them.
That's true.
Like I talked about with Scott Gardner earlier this week, Lavelle can throw the ball around, which they did not have while he was out, and he's really talented when he gets out in space and can run the ball. I think he gives that offense a little bit of juice. The question again is the defense against the run attack from Southwest Edgecombe. Keziah Everett, who's arguably Farmville Central's best defensive player, dealing with a little bit of a knee injury this week. Coach Gardner wasn't sure if he was going to be able to play or not.
That hurts.
It's going to be a tough matchup with him if they have to go without him. I don't like their chances. This is a tough one to pick. I think Farmville Central gives them a run at home, but I'm going to take Southwest Edgecombe here just because I think they're too big up front. Farmville Central's got some size up front, but the depth has been an issue for the entire, not just this year, but the past couple of years with the Jaguars. So I think Southwest comes in and wears Farmville Central down and gets a win on the road. That takes us to the last game. You mentioned North Johnston. Farmville Central beat them last week. North Johnston at North Pitt this week, a North Pitt team that desperately in need of a win, and a North Johnston team that's explosive, got some playmakers on offense, and kind of averages around 350 yards a game. I think we mentioned it last week, maybe, that they're pretty split in being able to do it through the air and on the ground. North Pitt, this is one that seems like, in terms of record and in terms of what North Johnston did, coming off a loss, coming into Bethel, this seems like if you're going to get one, if you're North Pitt, to kind of turn this thing around in the last couple weeks of the year, this is one that you got to get.
Definitely.
I think they are in dire need of a confidence boost right now. Kind of got handled on the road last week at Beddingfield. So I'm gonna step out and I'm gonna take the Panthers in this one because I think they're at home. They need something good to happen to kind of salvage a little bit of something here as we get late in the year. And I think this is a week to do it. So I think they're gonna pick up a win at home.
All right, I like the pick. I was committed, though, as we were going through this, and I feel like the last 2 or 3 weeks we've done the exact same thing for every game. So sorry, Panthers, but by default, I'm going North Johnston just to keep it interesting. If anything, for mine and your sake, to keep Friday night interesting of who wins that battle, since, again, we've been too vanilla with this thing. So I'm shaking it up. I'm going North Johnson, even though that's probably a favorite, I would think, if Vegas was doing Eastern North Carolina prep football odds.
Agreed.
I'm probably taking the safe route, but if you would have gone North Johnson, I was going to go North Pitt. That's my reasoning.
We gotta shake it up. We gotta shake it up somehow.
Yeah, that's what I'm going with. So that's my final pick there.
Good deal. Well, those are the 5 matchups for this week. Like you said, Ronnie, you'll be maybe at Farmville Central, maybe at North Pitt. We're still working out the kinks there as of Wednesday afternoon. I'll be here at Conley with updates on Twitter and a story in in Saturday's Reflector and at reflector.com. We'll have some fun matchups. We'll be keeping an eye on South Central at New Bern. That one is going to be really interesting to check out. So we'll have results and stories on all of those games in Saturday's Reflector. Like I said, at reflector.com. We'll have updates on Twitter. He's at Ronnie W11. I'm at Reflector Jordan. And should be a fun week, Ronnie. We're closing in on the end of this thing, and a couple of pretty important matchups here. This is a matchup with the race in that ECC 3A 4A. Obviously the tough battle for South Central on the road, but a game here at Conley against a Rose team that Conley probably should beat if they're going to stay unbeaten in that league. But this a week that could be a trap if you're not careful if you're Conley. So should be a fun matchup. We'll have all the results in the paper and high school football coverage for these last 3 weeks of the regular season. So thank you guys for checking us out. Enjoy the games Friday, and we'll see you next week.